For this tutorial, we're going to have a look at Mixamo and bringing it into Blender. There's a few Mixamo tutorials out there, but I've not found one that's as smooth as the way I'd like it to work. So we've got some animations, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that these animations are unique by changing the bits and pieces that you've got inside Mixamo, so we can change the posture, and we can have a look at the how the posture looks, so whether the posture is leaning over or whether it's up straight. And this will actually change each model. It gives the models their more unique approach, so we can get quite a few things out. And I can also have a look at things like the reach and the stride. So the reach will give us more reach towards the camera, and then if we've got the reach down, then it'll just drag, almost like dragging your arms. So I quite like that one. And we can also look at things like the stride gait and the speed at which they're coming towards you. So for this to actually work as an animation, if you've ever worked in games, you would know that you don't want to have any translations. So having the actual zombie walk or the character walk in place stops us inheriting these extra translations. So this is translating forward, but when we click the in place button, it just animates on the spot, and that's what we actually want to get from this. So we can select all the little settings that we've got. Once we're happy with those settings, then we can come up and we can download the model and save that model in our force structure wherever we want to save it. Now I'm going to bring this down with the skin because I want to bring the model in as well. And I'm not going to look at the keyframe reduction. It's something I might look at a later date. But we're going to be using nonlinear animation to do the editing inside Blender. So it doesn't matter how many keyframes we bring in. So we're just going to download that file, save it somewhere where we can get access to it. I'm just going to put it in my downloads folder, make sure we can call it something new, and then we're ready to bring it into Blender. So here's what it will look like in Blender. And you can see that I've actually created some guides, so that the guides are there for us to be able to see where the feet need to go. And this has all been set up already. I've already done the NLAs on here, and you can see that the feet hit those markers and it walks backwards and forwards, and it feels all right. If we were to animate this character just with a translation in the y-axis, what we would find is that the feet would be sliding all over the place, a little bit like an ice skater, and that's not how we want it to look. So I'm going to take you through the process of bringing in the new model and making sure that we make sure that those feet that have got those contact points on the floor hit those markers as we come forward. So you can see I've got the NLA set up, so the NLA track's been duplicated a couple of times, and then I've actually added keyframes to the actual armature's translation in the y-axis. So opening up a new scene, we're just going to keep the cube. I'm going to keep the light, and I'm going to keep the camera as well. But I'm going to scale the cube down. This is going to act as a reference point for me, and I'm going to use this reference point to figure out where the feet need to be. Now, because it's a looped animation, and most of the animations that you get from Mixamo are looped animations, we can actually use that. So I'm just going to rename it to something that's sensible, and then I'm going to bring in my downloaded FBX file and bring it into our scene. So now we've got it in our scene, what we can do is just quickly have a look at the way that it's been structured. As we can see, we've got about 78 frames of animation with this one. That's a good amount, and it should loop through. All the textures have come through as well, but obviously we can see the armature over the top of this. Now we could just hide the armature, but there's ways of actually reviewing your models when you're inside Blender. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the visibility of those bones. So when the visibility of the bones is changed, at the moment those bones are set to be octagonal. So what we need to do is we need to open up the armature, we need to select the armature bones and then go down into the object properties, down into the viewport display, and change the display type from octagonal to a wireframe, and that just makes it so much easier for us to see. We can also make the same sort of changes to the cube. I'm just going to scale this cube again. I think we just need the cube to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to do that by eye, just scaling that in, pressing S. And then again, if we change the properties of that cube, we could actually change that to wireframe only in DisplayPort. As it stands, it doesn't really matter at the moment because I'm going to put these, I'm going to hide these when we do the final renders. So what I need to do first is I need to just place these cubes sort of in the center of the foot. It's not imperative that it's actually on the foot, it's just to give us a reference point. And then I need to move the cubes, so I can move the cubes up, or actually it's probably better if I move the cubes down underneath the what would be the floor plane, and we could almost these could act as like stepping stones for us as our reference. They're just a key reference guide, that's all they are. So what I need to do is work out how many I need. So as I cycle through, I can see I need at least 3 per turn, and then I need to just create a loop. So with these two selected, I'm just going to Control J just to join them together. Just make sure we've renamed them, so it's just going to be locator reference. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a modifier to this, an array modifier, and just change the direction to -y. Get that in with a minus. And I can see that it actually butts up against the other one, so I just need to create a bit of a gap between the two. So something like -1.6 should be fine. That's because I've tested these models before, so I know where I am just about. And then I can just add more counts to the array, and that will give me more to do. So the next thing I need to do is I need to go into pose mode, and then I need to create a window that I can use. So I'm going to create from the animation layout, I'm going to create a window that's got the nonlinear animation window, and then if I just drop down, you can see that I can select that Mixamo animation track, and I can just press Shift D, drag and drop that in, and I can just repeat that process. So now when I actually scrub through my animation, do that 4 times, you can see that when I scrub through the animation, it's now going to be cycling on the spot. So just going to set the keyframes up so I've got a good amount in there, and then as you can see, I'm just scrubbing through that, and it's just looping now on the spot, which is what we want to do. But the real bit of this tutorial is to actually create that translation in the y-axis, and we could probably make the characters walk and turn with a few extra little keyframes on rotation as well. So the cameras are all set just to help us just keyframe into our right position, and what we can do next is we can go in to object mode. So we don't want to be in pose mode, we want to actually affect the object, the armature itself, so we get access to the coordinates. So selecting that armature, then I'm going to go into the object properties for the armature. So we'll just open this up, and if we go into the object properties, you can see now what we can do is set a keyframe on the Y translation. That's the direction we want to take it in, and then we can actually start to plan out our animated sequence. So if we just reset this back, set this back to 0, I can set a keyframe then. Just insert a single keyframe, we don't need to make lots of other keyframes, and we just need to figure out where the end of it would be. Now, it looks like it's got sort of 4 iterations, so it's 4 times that distance. So I'm just going to put a keyframe in at the end, so make sure you do the translation first and then set the keyframe, then you can scrub backwards and forwards, and then make sure you also select those keyframes and change them to linear so that there's a constant speed. We don't really want to create any extra animation effects and events by having an ease in or ease out on the actual speed going forward. So now what we need to do, we've actually got quite close because we could guesstimate where we were, but what we need to do now is we need to make sure that we look at the foot that's always going to be standing on the floor, and that's the focal point for where the animation keyframes need to go in. So as I slide forward, I'm looking at where that right foot is about to come off contact with that block. Now it looks like it's on frame 62, but actually it's actually moving inside, so there is actually already a movement starting to happen, and it's going on the inside. You can see that on the inside. So what I actually need to do is I actually need to go back. As you can see, we're off the cube, so I need to stay on the cube. So if I go back a little bit, that's in line with the cube, and it's around frame 55. I think we need to put the first keyframe in. So once we've got it, we're happy, we move the object, do the translation, and then we're going to add the keyframe to the armature's Y translation. So as you can see now, as we look, even though it is actually sliding, because we're actually animating that slide forward at the same speed, we're getting a parallax type effect going on. So the next one we're going to look at is the left foot, and again this is the same thing. So we're looking at where the left foot, where it takes off from the floor. So the weight's being transferred over to the left foot for the character. Doesn't really matter yet about the slide. It's going to slide. We should have to look at where is that foot going to come off the floor, and then we can actually set our keyframe. So once we're happy with it, around about frame 91 or 2, we can set that keyframe in after we've moved it and translated it. So just remember, it's move timeline, move translation, set keyframe. And now you can see we've got these 2 points that have been locked into place, and we're ready for the next one. Now obviously we need to add a few more of our trackers. So what we need to do is just select our box and then go back into our modifier and just up the count, and you've already got your spacing set out. So I found that was a really quick and easy way of doing it, and it's again one of those neat little blender things that just it just saves time. So it's quite good that we've got that in there. So now it's just a case of going through, having a look at the distance between frame sort of 60 and or 55 and 92 or whatever it was, and then just putting a keyframe in around about the similar frame. And again, just making sure that we've got that foot translation on the cube itself, and then set the keyframe in the object properties. And then we can just keep going and just always keep scrubbing backwards and forwards, make those minor adjustments, minor tweaks, and you can actually nail these down pretty good as you're coming forward. So this is really an easy sort of way of just eyeballing up some translation points on a character that's walking basically on the spot. And there we have it. So just a quick speeded up version of just putting those in. And once we're happy with that, you can see that we've now sort of nailed that character walking towards the camera. There doesn't seem to be too much slippage on the feet. You can see that all of the movement left and right, up and down, is all taken care of from the Mixamo model itself. And we've got a pretty good way of now working out just where our keyframes need to be. So we could just bring in other models from Mixamo, we could just blend them together, and we could just then do them in separate files if we want to, and then just mix them together in one file by appending them together. So the opening video that you saw was a couple of those models that have been brought together, and that just means that we can then render them out and create the animations that we want. Now we'll do another tutorial just showing how we can actually then use the nonlinear animation editor to blend bipedal animations that we've got on our characters, or you could blend any animations really, so long as you're using the same parameters. So I hope that has been helpful, and leave any comments if you want.